Right, welcome back to the morning show right here on the Raj News Channel. In Cape Town, South Africa, African countries are making a concerted push to attract investment in their oil and gas sector at the African Oil Week, which gradually draws to a close today. Countries find themselves navigating a highly competitive field where collaboration is essential to secure critical funding. Arise international correspondent Adesuwa Giwa-Osage has this report.
30th anniversary of Africa Oil Week, African nations are aggressively vying for investments in their oil and gas sectors.
We want investors to come to the Cape area where we believe the elements of the petroleum system is very good. Then we may have to look at the fiscal, right? For instance, royalty. You don't expect somebody, an investor, to pay a royalty of maybe 12.5% in waters of 3,500 meters. So we are looking at a certain sliding scale where the royalties in deep water is going to be inversely proportional to the water level. Right. So the deeper you are, the less you pay royalty.
New entrants like Zanzibar and Tanzania are seeking to attract investors.
Well, it is our first licensing round, and several countries have been there before. For us, it's a huge, it was a huge task to actually get here, and we are very happy with the process itself, and it has many significance in terms of putting Zanzibar in the map of upstream oil and gas. 3-4 years ago, nobody had Zanzibar in terms of the upstream activities. Maybe tourism, maybe spices, but not oil and gas province. So this first licensing round is a door towards diversifying our economy.
Nigeria received just 5% of Africa's total oil and gas investment in 2023 and is hoping that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's initiatives will reverse that trend.
In Nigeria, I think, and for the purpose of this presentation, we believe that a wise investor should consider the Nigerian licensing round for a number of reasons. I'm just talking of a wise investor.
Our President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in line with this declaration that Nigeria is ready for business, again, consider the fact that there's need to give more incentives in a manner to make Nigeria more, that is investor friendly. And to that extent, as I've illustrated in my presentation here today, has granted what we call presidential initiatives, all aimed at enhancing the operations in the Nigeria oil and gas sector, attracting more investment, especially in the Nigeria upstream.
The Nigeria bid round entry fee, that is called signature bonus, is they made it very, very competitive. So this is part of the good news that you take.
Africa Oil Week conference centers on sustainable development in the upstream sector with a focus on expanding Africa's gas value chain.
Oil and gas is going to be with us for a while. How long that is, we don't know. But for host countries such as us, it then reinforces the need to maximize our oil resources while we have the time, given the time we have, because we still need to add 200 million people with estimates to 400 million over the next couple of years, next couple of decades. Energy security, energy access is going to be top priority for not only Nigeria, but
some African leaders are calling for a moratorium on energy transition as traditional financiers increasingly abandon fossil fuels for sources of renewable energy.
Higher carbon burning fuels such as PMS and diesel to cleaner burning fuels such as CNG and LPG, and over time we'll now transition to electrification of energy and reach net zero.
Adesuwa Giwa-Osage, Arise News, Cape Town.
For the closing update on the African Oil and Gas Week holding in Cape Town, Arise international correspondent Adesuwa Giwa-Osage joins us. African Oil Week draws to a close today. In your opinion, what are the important announcements that have been made at the African Oil Week?
Well, good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Vimbai. And good morning, Dr. Abati. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Yes.
Yes, it's so lovely to see you guys this morning. Honestly, I was about to say one of the most interesting announcements I had heard this week is the fact that the Africa Energy Bank said that it's been able to get 45% of its minimum startup capital of $5 billion. And this is, from its 18 member states, which include Nigeria, Angola, and Egypt. But I think the most fascinating thing I've heard this morning is Dr. Abati saying that Senator Lokobiri doesn't know what he's talking about. 50 billion before Christmas. I mean, I'm expecting Santa Claus to give me a plane before Christmas, and I think that might be more realistic than the Nigerian oil sector getting 50 billion before Christmas. It's so bizarre when these statements are made. And, going off of what, Rufai, you said earlier, we need to trust the NMPC and we need to trust our institutions. Now, beyond the announcement coming from the Africa Energy Bank, beyond the investments that they're trying to drive, particularly, across Africa, Tanzania and Uganda's East African oil pipeline is also one of those, and that's a $3 billion initiative that's still suffering from funding. The biggest topic here this week is actually funding. So again, this $50 billion, Nigeria needs to we have to talk to ourselves about numbers. The numbers we see on social media being thrown around and numbers coming out of our members of the government's mouth sometimes. These huge sums are bizarre because it's very important that we're specific. It's very important that we have agendas, and it's very important that investors on the global stage trust us. Now, something that happened yesterday is that 3 African regions did announce their licensing rounds. We have Tanzania, Liberia, and Zanzibar. Now, Liberia announced 29 oil blocks, Tanzania 24 oil blocks. This is its 5th licensing round. All 24 are offshore. And Zanzibar's first licensing round, in the report that just played, I spoke to the person who's in charge of the ZU PR there, who, they're trying to get investment into their oil and gas segments, particularly offshore.
All right, thanks so much for that, Adesua. Can you shed a little bit more light on how Benga Komolafe has fared with the NUPRC and, of course, Nigeria's licensing round, as you're still on the topic of licensing rounds?
Yes, so Nigeria is actually, to my knowledge, targeting $5 to $10 billion of the $90 billion that is supposed to be invested in the deep offshore space in the next couple of years. 90 billion for the whole world, but I think our senator might want 50% of that by Christmas. Now, the Nigerian round was announced earlier. We have 24 oil blocks. 17 of those are offshore. Originally, Engineer Komolafe had said that they were going to put 12 up, but now they were able to increase that due to more data that the NUPRC was able to gather between May and June of this year. Now, they're expecting that the contracting and the ministerial approval will happen in January, but right now the bids have already been placed and bids are already open for Nigeria's licensing round.
Well, today is the last day. What is in the agenda? And then I would like to ask you, additionally, Ghana, we're told, is going to host the protest, the Oil Week next year, right? The African Oil Week, September 2025. What was Nigeria looking at? The first time that African Oil Week will be held outside Cape Town in 30 years. And it's going to Ghana. It's not coming to Nigeria. Our delegation there, what were they looking at? But in any case, what's on the agenda for today?
Well, I will say, first of all, the agenda for today, very surprisingly, is renewable energy. Going forward, not just Nigeria, Africa is thinking about their energy mix, and so it's no longer just crude oil, it's also renewable energy. It's geothermal, it's nuclear, it's wind and solar. Now, your question about Ghana, well, this was obviously something that was decided before this week began, but Ghana has been positioning themselves, not just at Africa Oil Week, but, just weeks earlier, just some weeks ago, I was was at New York for the UN General Assembly, where Ghana's Minister of Foreign Affairs is being put forward to be the Secretary General of the Commonwealth. Now, it shows that Ghana believes in soft power, in diplomacy, in being able to take their compared to a small nation, to a very larger stage internationally. What is Nigeria doing in terms of using our soft power, in terms of using our diplomacy, in terms of positioning ourselves on the world stage to be taken more seriously is a question that's worth asking. Nigeria has the second largest proven oil and gas deposits on the whole continent, and particularly we have exports in terms of our culture, our music. Our soft power should be much more recognizable than Ghana's. But when you're talking about the black diaspora, when you're talking about tourism, when you're talking about the ability to attract investments, it seems that smaller African countries with smaller resources are being able to do much more with those resources that we are doing right now. And it's not as though, Ghana has elections very soon. Their president is not very popular at the moment. However, it does seem that they've been able to use some of their resources, both personal, both natural resources, and take that to a different level. Just yesterday, the Côte d'Ivoire delegation was here talking about their refinery. 90% of the crude oil they refine comes from Nigeria. So again, it's worth asking, what is Nigeria doing? Now, I don't want to speak on the Nigerian delegation that are here, because they are here and they are trying to promote, Nigeria's investment round. Engineer Komolafe has done a good job speaking about the incentives that are available to investors. And so, there's a lot of work being done. Before we even arrived here, the special advisor to the president on energy, Oluvehijen, also announced incentives. So there is work being done, but again, it's worth asking, why is Nigeria not better positioned?
All right. So it's interesting to see that the nuclear energy feature at this conference, is nuclear really clean energy? And what is this talk about alternative sources of energy that's been going on for a while? And is it over our pay grade in Africa to be talking nuclear at this point in time? Because I know we had a little stab at some ideas at nuclear at some point in Nigeria, but I don't know how that materialized. I mean, we're trying to do something with Gazprom back in the days. So this talk about nuclear, should we just face our 50 billion Christmas gift for the oil sector, or we should be looking at nuclear in Africa?
Definitely not. Definitely not. Now, there are 18 African countries that are looking at nuclear. There is a nuclear power plant not very far from here in Cape Town. It provides about 5% of South Africa's energy, half of the energy for the Western Cape. But nuclear energy is not clean energy. I honestly think this is one of those things where the West has framed the conversation in a way that suits them, particularly because nuclear energy does not give us greenhouse gases. So in terms of climate change, it's better in that regard. But when we're talking about clean energy itself, when we're talking about the fact that there is nuclear waste, the fact that we will require uranium, the fact that it's very capital intensive, the fact that you need large bodies of water, it has ecological damage, environmental impact, and impact to the people, particularly of that region. The rural communities or the local communities suffer a lot when it comes to nuclear energy. Even Germany is divesting from their nuclear. So I'll be very interested to see what is being said today, because Kenya is one of the countries that is considering nuclear energy. They currently have a feasibility plan, but you have serious environmental challenges there, and there's been a lot of pushback from the activists in Kenya against this nuclear energy or nuclear proliferation. And honestly, I don't know if I'd feel safe if Nigeria started looking at nuclear energy. Let's understand the one we have on ground first.
Very well said. Well, we look forward to the outcome of today as they wrap up Africa Oil Week there in Cape Town. Enjoy yourself, and I hope you get some time to let your hair down. That's Adesuwa Giwa Osagi from Africa Oil Week.